Hello YouTubers, and welcome to the Holes Missile channel and this third episode of Wood ID. First off, I'd like to welcome all the new subscribers on board. There's been quite a few come on board lately, so to those folks that are here because of the woodworking part of it or the machining part of it, hope you guys get something out of it and enjoy what you can glean from the channel here. Today we're going to talk about, in this Wood ID episode, we're going to talk about pine. Now, we all know pine. Any of us that have worked with wood, there are so many varieties that it's not even funny. It's pretty much a ubiquitous species that covers the globe. There's even some pines in Australia, the Wollemi pine, for example. Although it's protected, it was thought to be extinct for, I forget, 140 million years or something like that, and then it was rediscovered in Wollemi National Park in Australia, and so hence the name. But again, there are pines that are all over the globe. So anyway, with that, we make the distinction in pines. There's several varieties. You have 1, 2, 3, and 5 needled pines. Now, the pines with 1 and 2 needles are often classified as pinyons. Those occur generally in desert areas or very arid areas. The 2 and 3 needled pines are considered in the family of red pines. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to, we got red pine and white pine. Well, how about yellow pine? Well, yellow pine is considered one of the red pines because when it's dried, the heartwood in it takes on a little bit of a reddish tint, especially after it goes through a kiln. The heartwood has a tendency to darken in a little more dramatically than it would if it air dried. Here's a picture. So anyway, there's sometimes, a difficulty can arise sometimes in trying to distinguish white pine from a regular red pine, and we're going to show you here how to do that. Now, I've got this little branch of fox pine here. I'll give you a little bit of a close-up on this, showing you later on what what I'm talking about. But in the red pines, the cones, of course, this gets into the dendrology of it, and I'll get into that in more detail in another video later on. But the red pines have generally egg-shaped cones, whereas the white pines have elongated cones, with the exception of digger pine, although that's not really a commercially exploited species. It grows in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada in California. There's some guys that kind of monkey around with it, but it's so wild and woolly that you can't hardly make anything of any value out of it. But it is a white pine species, and it has a tendency to, it has, the cones are more like shaped like a football. But anyway, let me get it close here. As you can see here, here's the cones of this guy, and they're more of an egg shape, whereas, like I say, the white pines, I don't have any specimens of white pine right now, so I can't hardly show you that, but this is a good specimen of a red pine. And here, let me get in closer here. Now, right here at the base of the needles, this is called the fascicle. And you'll see, we'll get into the identifying trademarks of red pines here in a minute with these fascicles, because these sometimes stay behind and actually incorporate into the wood, and this is what you see. And this is a 2-needled species. As you can see, there's 2 needles here in a pair. Scotch pine is 3 needles sometimes, 2 needles sometimes. Ponderosa pine is a 3-needled species. And then the white pines are all 5-needled. So let me bring the camera around here and we'll take a closer look at some of the identifying features that separate white pines from red pines. So we're handheld here, so I do apologize if this gets a little wobbly. Now, white pine, of course, all pines do develop these pitch pockets, although this stick of Scotch pine here is relatively clean. Now, in pines you get what's called a limb whorl, and with white pines, these limb whorls are generally quite far apart, and these occur at junctions of where the leader stopped growing and then started growing the following spring. So this is 1 year growth here. Now as you go down it, you'll see here's another one, here's another one, here's another one. But the substantial limbs usually occur at the limb whorls where the growth started and stopped. These are small epicormic branches that occur throughout the year. You'll see that same thing here in the red pines as well. However, there's one key feature that substantially differs from the red pine and then from the white pine. So as we go along, as you can see, there's quite a bit of difference. There's quite a bit of length between the whorls. These things will grow up to sometimes 4.5 feet when they're young, and as you can see, there's the next one, and it goes up quite a bit. Now let's get in close here to this red pine and white pine limb whorl here. Now these are what's known as spike knots, and you can see the similarities. Now the one thing that separates the red pine again is of course the color of the heartwood. And now as we get closer in here, you can see some of the remnant fascicles from the needles around the core of the tree, around the pith. We're close to the pith here. This is usually in this first 2 years of growth is where you see these. Now if we go over here to the white pine, here we are right here along the pith, and you do not see any of the fascicles in the remnants of fascicles in the wood. Now that's not to say it can't occur. I've never seen it, but if anybody out there who has, by all means put it in the comment section below. Now the other differentiating trademark, of course, you have these epicormic branches in between the limb whorls. Now here we have a major limb whorl, and here we have a major limb whorl. Now this guy really took a shot, up to, into the sky as he grew, and here we get another 4 feet later, another limb whorl. These are the annual growths. Now the substantial difference is these epicormic branches that occur between sometimes can get pretty good size and fool you into thinking, okay, this is where the growth left off. In some cases that's true, but here we only have a single limb on one side of the pith, and here we have a complete whorl. Now this is where the growth started and stopped in 1 year, and this is where it did the same thing, where it started and stopped in 1 year. This could be one of those instances where the tree only made a small leap, so to speak, where you got two limbs together, where it actually makes a whorl. As we turn it over though, we can only see there's only one limb. Well, there's two there. But this is a substantial limb, and so this is one of those epicormic limbs that is generated outside the normal limb whorls. And differences in the pith, there are some, but for the most part they're fairly small. The red pines have a tendency to wander, and so they meander a little bit, and so their heartwood isn't always nice and straight, whereas the white pines, this one has a little bit of a twist to it, or a little bit of zigzag, but overall it's pretty straight arrow. I mean, my dad used to make arrows out of white pine. So the other identifying feature is the sapwood. You have a distinct sapwood. As you can see here, this heartwood is definitely got a reddish hue to it, and the sapwood is white. Now here on this white pine, the sapwood is hard to discern. The only reason I know it's here is because, you know, I picked this board out, and so I could see it, and it's not really visible in this light very good. But the sapwood in white pine is almost impossible to distinguish. And as you turn it over and look at it, there's really no telling where the sapwood ends and the heartwood begins. And so here we got a short little growth spurt. Although this could be more epicormic branching. Let's see. Yep, this is the next limb whorl. Yeah, this is it right here. So it slowed down in its growth. Oh, yes. Another difference, you can actually tell the difference between white and red pines. It was the fingernail test. Now, if you were to try to scratch or mar the surface of the wood with your fingernail, let me bring the camera around here and show you this. Now, if you go to this white pine and run your nail across it, you can actually gouge this. I'm not sure if this is showing up. I'm not seeing it in the viewfinder here, but rest assured it does show up quite nicely here in the board. Whereas you do the same thing on the Scotch pine here, you will see it in the early wood, but it won't dent the late wood, and it definitely dents the late wood in the white pine. So that's another way you can kind of tell. And then also the smell of white pine is more of a cinnamon flavor. It has a definite cinnamony type aroma to it, whereas the red pines have more of a turpentine smell. So I'm going to put a list of commercially exploited species of white pine right here. This is their Latin name, and here's their commercial name that you find. These are the species that are often that are commercially exploited. Now there are some like limber pine and some other high elevation pines that are once off in a pine, or in a pile of lumber, and they're hard to distinguish from the normal, in air quotes, pines because of the similarity. The lumber all looks pretty much the same. Like if you were to saw up a limber pine and throw it in with a regular eastern white pine, I'd seriously doubt you'd be able to really tell the difference. And so here's the list of commercially exploited red pines. Now for you folks down under or in South America or in other parts of the world that have access to this kind of stuff, by all means, if you have a comment or would like to supplement the monologue here, by all means do put that down in the comment section below. I've worked with some southern yellow pine before, and it's similar to the western yellow pine, i.e. ponderosa pine. However, it is a little different. Then of course radiata pine from New Zealand, although that is actually what's called a Monterey pine. It originally came from California, off the Monterey Islands, off the coast of California, and it was transplanted to New Zealand where it did exceptionally well, and it really took off. And so the New Zealanders, the Kiwis, have quite a, shall we say, a radiata pine industry going down there. There's a mill in Terabella, California, Sierra Wood Products, that started importing radiata pine logs because they were having a timber shortage there at their location in Terabella, and they started sawing that stuff. And I'm not sure if they're still in business. If anybody has any information, by all means, there's the comment section down below. Throw that in there. Last I heard, I think they were still around, but there again, things change so quickly sometimes that maybe they've shut down by now. Who knows? Now, pinyon pines used to be commercially exploited during the gold rush days in, say, the Panamint Mountains and so forth. They served pretty much as a food source for the natives that lived in the area, and there was quite a bit of scuttlebutt over that because the miners were using that to make charcoal in order to smelt their ore, and it was causing quite the famine amongst the local population there that depended on the nuts for sustenance. Pinyon pines do have, like red pines, you know, rounder cones, but their nut is quite large. There are other pines with large nuts as well. There's digger pine, although the kernel of the nut is actually quite small in compared to the rest of the thing. The husk is really thick on those. Sugar pine has a nice big nut as well. It is edible, although it doesn't taste very good. The pinyon pines, of course, you see those at the store every once in a while, you know, at Safeway, whatnot. And I've tried them, but it's like eating a mouthful of soap. Sorry for those folks out there who like them. You know, it's not my cup of tea. But anyway, the pinyon pines are 1 and 2 needled trees that occur, like I say, at high altitudes or in fairly arid conditions. So, well, YouTubers, that's a wrap for this episode of Wood ID and the pines. Hope you guys got a little something out of it. If you have any questions, by all means, ask away in the comment section below. In my lumber drawing video, I made sure that I read and answered just about every question and comment that was in there, just to supplement the information that was there in the monologue. Sometimes I do forget to mention stuff. You know, like I said, with the smell of the white pines, it's generally more like of a cinnamon smell, whereas the red pines have more of a turpentine smell. So that's another distinguishing feature in between the pines. So with that, I kind of hope you guys got a little something out of this. Again, like I say, if there's questions or comments, thoughts, critiques, or what's ever on your mind, by all means, put it in the comments section below. I'm always open, you know, to answer any questions you may have on this subject, because it does get quite, you know, in depth. So if there's something I did forget, or if you have supplemental information to the topic, if you live in a different part of the world and have seen other characteristics in pine that are noteworthy, by all means, I do appreciate it if you do put it in the comment section below. So with that, I thank you for stopping by, and we'll see you again very soon.